Hello, my book hoes. Welcome to today's video. I am taking part in virtual Jane Con this year, and today's video is all about Pride and Prejudice 2005. So, if you've ever wanted to get real deep, like 6 inches deep, this will be the video for you. Welcome to Book Hoarding by Bianca. I call my followers book hoes if you have not been here for a while. And you're welcome to stick around for this video and beyond, because I like to talk about the things that bring me joy, like costuming and sewing and crafting. Today's presentation is 6 inches deep, recreating costumes from Pride and Prejudice 2005. A little about me, if you don't know me. I really like Pride and Prejudice 2005. Like, really like it. I don't care if you don't like it. I don't care if it's not your favorite. It's my favorite. Doesn't matter if it's not your favorite, because it doesn't affect how this is my favorite. I'm not here to debate best Darcys, even though you're incorrect if you are going to argue with me about my favorite Darcy, because my favorite Darcy is not wrong. It's my favorite Darcy. It doesn't change that your favorite Darcy can be a different Darcy. And I'm not here to debate historical accuracy. I am a costume design MFA student. I'm about to go into my 2nd year. So when I talk about costume design, I actually know what I'm talking about. And that doesn't really have anything to do with historical accuracy. I'm also, in this program on scholarship because I'm that much of a badass. So settle down and let's hear me out. I guess let's start with why Pride and Prejudice 2005. I love it. And I think that's a good enough reason. But we should talk about other parts and aspects of this, right? So one is the vibes. I think we can all agree. It's dreamy. It's romantic. It's swoony. Is that kind of a problem? Yes. Yes. I'm going to say yes. I do think that in a world where like I love this movie, where I love the romance of it, romanticizing time in history is bad. And I think that maybe not in this video, but in other spaces, I mean, I already have a video about talking about racism in Austin, but in other parts of Jane Con and other spaces, people are already talking about this. But I think that, like, while I am talking about the romantic in this video, I also, in my mind, I'm always thinking of the harm that can be done if we take that too far, and if we don't also kind of balance that with, like, hey, there's some reality here. So please seek other voices and sources when we talk about, like, how romanticizing this era is a bad thing. I'd say, also be really aware of how Jane Austen can be co-opted and is often co-opted by white supremacists as you go about the things that you do. So as much as I love the vibes of this movie, I also want to preface all this with we need to be vigilant. We can both admit that we love the vibes and also admit that this is media that does harm, much like a lot of the Jane Austen adaptations do harm by continuing to propagate a specific kind of Regency England and ignoring where the wealth comes from. Back to why Pride and Prejudice 2005. The costumes. I think they're beautiful. I think they're flowy. They look comfy. They look well designed. I think they look livable, unlike I think a lot of adaptations to me don't look like something that people would live in and work in. These look real to me. Number 3 here is nostalgia. I saw this movie in theaters with my grandma, who's very special to me and who's raised me, and who I'm currently caring for. She goes through hospice. And it meant a lot to me. I also was a teenager at the time, and this movie was perfectly aged for me. I think that I'm willing to admit, unlike some people, that the age you are when an adaptation comes out is actually really critical in, like, if you're gonna like it or not, because this was aged for me. I was of the right age to find the heroine and the hero attractive, relatable, and all of those things. So this was the right time for me. This one hit the right spots. It didn't feel cringe or creepy or other things when it came out. I did run through multiple DVDs of this movie when I was growing up until it became a streaming movie. And then I stopped having to buy new DVDs, but I would routinely just put this on repeat. It was really comforting to me. It still is really comforting to me, especially as I go through some really hard things in my family right now. Let's talk about historical accuracy for a minute. I want to make it really clear. Historical accuracy is not costume design. Let that sink in. Historical accuracy is not costume design. We could unpack all the problems with even the term historical accuracy and how that's more often used for gatekeeping than anything else, than an appreciation. It's not costume design. It's not costume design. We're not here to talk about the accuracy of the costumes, because that does not matter. We are here to talk about the costumes that were designed for this movie. Design is not the same as accuracy. Design is not reenactment. Got it? Good. I wanted to give a little bit of highlights to the costume designer for this, Jacqueline Duran, also designed for Atonement, Anna Karenina and Cyrano, which I think are all other Joe Wright movies, and Beauty and the Beast, Little Women, and Barbie. I'm sure there are other favorites in here from folks, and I'm pretty sure that, like, if you loved Barbie, you'll probably admit this person does know what they're doing. Stop saying that people don't know what they're doing just because they don't design historically accurate clothes. It's a choice. Design is a choice. This is maybe the saddest slide in this whole thing. I'm sad to report that 2005 will soon be 20 years ago. I've done the math a couple of times. I did check. This is a really rough one for me to hold space for. But it's been almost 20 years since this movie came out. And I have always thought that I would make my dream wardrobe for this movie, which was just recreating as many of Lizzie Bennett's costumes as I could. And now it's time. So that's why this is an important anniversary. Initially, I had hoped to make more of them by the time this video was out, but I just made one. That's just where we are in life and with everything happening. So 20 years is next year. I have time. Today's presentation is going to go roughly like this, now that we've gotten all the house rules out of the way. We're going to start with a breakdown of Lizzie's costumes, then we're going to review her wardrobe, and then I will be sharing costume resources. I will wrap up with attempting to recreate one of her outfits. Lizzie's costumes. Now, buckle up, because there's about 37 in here. Prepare yourselves. I want to give a little bit of, like, context to how I kind of consider these outfits. There's great costume continuity in this. Like, if they kind of have her in the same thing if she's throughout the same day, or if she gets, like, rained on, she does change and go do something right after in that same outfit. There are a couple of times where I'm not sure if it's the next day or not, and so I kind of count those as two outfits, if you will, and so that's kind of the vibe I was going for with selecting these, like, demarcations. There's also sometimes a little bit of variation, but yeah, I just tried to have it like this so it made sense. Also, if she does, like, a big accessory change, I do include that as a separate thing. Here we go. Now, we start, obviously, with the opening. I call this her brown cotton dress. It might not be cotton. I think it's cotton. There are many reasons why I think that. The way it moves, the way it can gather a bit, either it's cotton or very, very fine linen. So we start with her reading. She's in this dress as she reads. It's brown. This is setting the tone for she's going to wear a lot of earthy colors, earthy tones. Some people have problems with her silhouette. It's fine. They're setting this in an earlier period. It is not deep Regency. This is a fine middle ground waistline. Do not start the accuracy argument. It's not here. It doesn't work. She has this interesting kind of, I call them, like, her almost 3/4 sleeves, where a lot of her dresses don't have quite long sleeves. Especially because she does seem to have the habit of rolling them up or pushing them up. There's a little bit of gathering along the bodice, so it is a front closing dress. You can see that it's a front center on the bodice, and then the skirt itself, which is attached, closes a little bit to her right. There's, like, a little bit of a button offset. It's not quite to her full side seam. It's in between the centers and the side seam. And there's a couple layers, I think, in here when she's walking. Either she has an underdress on, or it has a second layer, like a liner in it. This is a really pretty dress. I think it moves well. I think, obviously, it's, like, this feels like a smart move for the Lizzie Bennett that's gonna be walking through the mud. Like, this feels like a washable dress. This feels like one of those dresses that people get excited about, because, like, if you travel with it, you can, like, wash it in your sink and dry it overnight in your hotel bathroom. This feels like that kind of dress to me. It feels very light. It feels very washable. So we first see her in this. She's reading her book. We watch and we wind through the Bennett household, ending with the whole scene about Bingley's coming to town, and Netherfield Park is let at last. Now we're moving on to the country dance. This is what I called her emerald dress. Now, you're going to see other photos of this later in this presentation. This, like many of the clothes that I'm going to show you, looks different depending on indoor, outdoor conditions and the decision on how to not only light it, but also how to color correct and even filter the images. I call this her little emerald dress. It is very, very similar to her last dress in terms of the sleeves are not quite down to her wrists. They are a little bit closer to her elbows, but I also think she kind of scrunches them up a little bit. I think she has that habit of doing that with all of her outfits a little. There is a sash along her waist that does kind of hide where the skirt closure is. I do think it's offset like the first one, because the bodice for this does close in the center front. Along her neckline is a little bit of lace. I think it's needle lace. It looks like very fine needle lace with a ribbon running through it to kind of gather it in. I think this is another either very fine linen or cotton dress because of how it moves, and also period cotton would have started becoming very, very popular. We move now from the ball into sister gossip time, which is when she's under the sheets. She's wearing a chemise. We don't get any good shots of the chemise, but there is a little bit of, I think, needle lace along the neckline. To breakfast, we have now moved in back into a new day at the Bennett household. I call this her indigo dress. I call it indigo because you can see the left and rightmost images are from the breakfast table. It's a kind of dark blue, and denim, obviously, indigo dyed. And then the middle image is from outside, where it can hit that kind of gray tone. I call it my indigo dress, the indigo dress, because I associate this kind of color changeability with dyes like indigo, where it's a natural dye, so it's going to look a little bit different than any kind of chemical dyes, in terms of the lighting, the atmosphere, the weather for the day. I think this is a really cool dress. This is doing a kind of overlap. She has a few dresses that have this little overlap situation happening. So it's not quite a center front closure. It is a little bit off to her right side, and then it flows into that offset right side closure on her dress. So she has a lot of these offset closures for the skirts, and they interact with the bodice in different ways. You can see again, this wrinkles really easily. I think again, to me, I'm like, this could be a chambray. That's what this could be. There's a little like dongly thing on her wrist. I think it's just like a very basic like strap thing that you can use to like pull the sleeve a little taut or keep it in place. A lot of her dresses are very simple in terms of detail. This does have buttons along the front edge, so it can look a little bit like a little warped, but it is just that there are these big buttons there. Most of her skirts, most of the body is in the back. Most of the gathers are in the back, and the front is fairly flat. So this is later. She is getting a letter about her sister being sick, and so she's getting ready to walk to Netherfield. The left two images are from the movie itself. The right image is one of those really fun. This is a promo image because the lighting looks nothing like the lighting in the movie. I call this the blue and gray striped dress. I don't think this reads as light green on screen. In real life, if you went up and looked at it, like, it apparently does look like light green, like the one in the right, but the movie, it does not look like that. So I'm gonna call it the blue and gray striped dress. She wears this as she walks to Pemberley. It does have a center front closure again at the bodice. There's this little ruffle that you can see along there. I think it's either attached to a lining that goes with this dress, or a specific thing that she wears with this dress. But there is a weird thing later where this just disappears, even though it's perfectly there every other time she wears it. So not quite sure if it just like they didn't attach like a dickie that day or something, or she wasn't wearing her short stays that day. Maybe it's attached to the short stays. But overall, this dress usually has that little white ruff showing out from under it. And so yeah, this is her muddy hem thing. She just adds a brown coat. We'll get better images of the brown coat later, but we never get really good ones. I love that the outfit she wears to Netherfield is the outfit she wears to Netherfield. We don't see her walking with luggage or bags. The entire time she's at Netherfield, she does not borrow anyone else's clothing. We only see her in what she walked in on. And I love it. I love it. I think that's perfect. It makes total sense that she would only be wearing that. So the entire time she's at Netherfield, we only see her in this blue, gray, striped dress. And so we see her in the sitting room. There's the dog. Where is the dog the rest of the time? I wish I knew. And then she also wears it like earlier when she's taking the turn about the room with Caroline. You can see on the right hand side that is the center front closure. It's not gathered like the others, so it's probably little buttons or little clippies. And then it is a little off to the side skirt closure that closes a little bit to the left. We move now to the hand clench scene, so that's obviously when she's leaving Netherfield. She's wearing the same thing. Exact same thing she came in on, she's wearing out. I really, really like this costume continuity because it just is like, this is what Lizzie rode in on, essentially, and she's wearing it the whole time she's here. She's not borrowing dresses from anybody. She's not trying to change clothes with anybody. We don't magically have her wearing something she didn't bring with her. She brought this, she's wearing this, and I like that. Later in town, she's wearing the same thing. So basically the way the scene goes is she goes in the carriage, they go home, Dad's like, hey, Mr. Collins is coming over tonight. And they're like, what? And this is very much her like, I have to go get dinner for the family. We have to go get food. Because DoorDash doesn't exist. The two left images are the ones that I grabbed from the movie. They're not amazing, but you can see the pocket on the coat and the big lapels. I think this is like an earlier kind of frock coat, cutaway coat situation that was her dad's that she now wears. It seems like a little bit of an earlier fashion to me, like a little bit earlier, because of the way that pocket is. And I think, yeah, you can see on the right that she is wearing the same outfit. That is a promo image. That far right image is a promo image because it is not the same lighting as the rest of the movie. That is where the dress looks like green is when it's not color corrected. It is not put under the filters the movie was in. So that is a more detailed shot because it's a promo image that was not put in the movie with any of the details they wanted it to look like. Moving on to the boiled potato dinner. We have her in a brown dress with a neck ruffle. We will see better images of this later, I promise. On the left side, there is a pastry chicken. Now you've seen it, you're welcome. We move into, now she's in town. This is when she goes to the ribbon shop, meets Wickham, and then there is dancing invitation, and they then talk about, like, you know, they run into Darcy and Bingley, and then she has a conversation with Wickham. This is the first time we see the brown jumper with a shirt. This brown jumper is always worn with the shirt. It makes sense. It would be a little bit scandalous otherwise. This is, I think, one of the most recreated, most iconic ones that people wear. It definitely looks super comfy. This to me also could very much be a linen. It looks like it's a nice, durable linen, but still lightweight. And it's usually always accessorized with her brown shawl. Later, we have her dressing for the ball. She's so excited. She's in her short stays and chemise. Now, I look at her shoulders and look at how the chemise is done, how it's kind of, she has it a little askew on one side, but then like a little close to her short stays on one side. And her short stays are tabbed. I want you to look at the shoulders on that because I don't think she wears those stays with this dress. Those shoulders, like the straps on those stays would have been showing through because her sleeve is sheer. And I think that little strap there that she has that's not sheer, I think, would be where the stays would be. And her stays are, I think, much wider than that. So I don't think she's actually wearing this at the ball. I'm fine with that. I just wanted to let you know that's the detail that I see. Netherfield Ball is her white dress. This is the only time we see her in this. I love that this movie is very precious with her and like colors. We only see it a couple of times. Unlike a lot of adaptations, and the idea of having Regency women always in white, this is the only time she is in white. This is the only time a lot of characters are in such formal white clothes. This is a beautiful, delicate dress. I have longed to make this for so long, and I hope that I get to. I think that this is a overlap bodice, and I think that the side seam is where the closure is, personally. It's beautiful, it's darling. I can't say enough about just like the layers that go into this, There's so many delicate little details. I love the sheer layer that's happening on her sleeve. I think the whole dress has a sheer layer over an opaque layer. I love how this moves. I love how it's really honestly so simple and so delicate, and it's really stunning. Now from the ball, we move into the Colin's proposal and rejection scene. This image is another one that is not actually from the movie itself. We don't actually see her running toward camera in this way. This scene of her running away from her mom does happen. It's just that this is a promo image to me, because it is not actually in, like, if you play this, you don't see her running toward camera like this. Later, we see her talking to her sister. Now, again, this is one of those interesting things where I just call a different outfit, different day, because I'm not quite sure if it's the same day or not. Brown cotton dress makes an appearance. Her farewell to Jane. She has a shawl wrapped around her, and she's wearing a brown dress of some kind. I think I see a sleeve peeking forward. I think this is the brown cotton dress, since we see no white shirt under that little peak we have around her shoulders. That's just what I think. We cannot confirm or deny, but I'm pretty sure that's just the brown cotton dress matched with the brown shawl. We move into the swinging montage. We see good images of her wearing her brown jumper dress and a brown coat in this. And then we have the montage continue moving, and we only see a couple of shots at the end of her neck up. But this image and a couple images like this exist, which tells me that there's actually a costume change that does happen here. It's the dress change. I think also the neck up, you don't see the white shirt collar. So I think that they actually shot this as the second part of that montage, and we just don't get a wider shot that sees her whole dress. So this is her second montage outfit. Now, visiting the Collinses, she's wearing her light brown coat. This is her light brown long coat, as I call it. It's not quite, I think, like a pelisse, like I've seen a lot of pelisses, and I think it's just like a different style to me. I'm just gonna call it her coat, because I think it's really intentional design to have it be not quite the same as other things. And it's over her indigo dress. You can see the second from the left is the promo image that I just grabbed. It's not from the scene. I don't think it is, at least, but either way, I think that's the dress she's wearing. I think that's the same dress. And again, you can see how that indigo looks differently in a different light. To me, it looks very denim-y, and a lot of the slow light, it looks, so that's why I keep calling it indigo. So yeah, she's wearing that when she comes to the Collinses, and she's told to put on whatever she brought is best. She's back in her emerald dress. Now you can see it a lot better here. You can see that beautiful little neckline I talked about. You can see that the sleeves kind of come up or are rolled up. We move on to Lizzie writing to Jane, again in her indigo dress with brown shawl. If you watch that kind of overlap that's happening, it can look a little squiggly, but those are actually the buttons. If you look closer, you can see the buttons are kind of the thing that's distracting from that line looking too straight. And she is accessorizing this with a brown shawl. Now later we have her in church and her first proposal look. This is the first and only time we get to see her in her bonnet. She is wearing her light brown coat and the blue-gray striped dress. In the rain, this dress looks much bluer to me. I'm sure it looked greener in person, but this is what it is. And you can also see her muddy hems in these shots. Unlike the actual muddy hem scene where we don't actually get to see it. We've had the interaction with Darcy. We've had some time to think about stuff. I call her depression banyan. I see her in a chemise and a robe here. I think this robe is vintage. I think that it is not Regency vintage. I think it's vintage in terms of like our time. I can see this as being like a 20s or 30s robe. It is really beautiful. I wish that we got better images. There's a ton of embroidery or surface work of some kind on this. It goes all on the back, all on the neckline. It goes along, I think the borders and the sleeve borders, like there's detailing everywhere on this, and it's really simple and beautiful, and I really like it because it's in the same kind of color scheme as Lizzie's stuff, clearly what she's comfortable in, but also there's really cool detail here, and I like the fact that she has something that's really detailed. Back to the Bennett house, we have her again in her indigo dress. She's in the kitchen, so she has a little apron she accessorizes with, but then she also has this moment where she takes off the coat, and you can see that it is lined with a much lighter color inside. Bedtime, she can't quite open up to her sister about what happened. She can't tell her about the proposal. She's in her feelings about a lot of things. She's in her chemise. You can see a little drawstring peeking out along her neckline. Now, she's on a trip. This is kind of the fantasy dream scene. She's in her light brown coat, and I believe she's in her brown cotton dress here because the movie is great continuity and she's wearing it here. And I think that is the continuity they chose. I did have it separate though, just because it might be the different brown dress. Here she is lounging, again, light brown coat and her brown cotton dress. At Pemberley, we see her once again in a light color. This is the only time we see this dress. We only see her in light colors twice. It's these really important moments with Darcy. She's wearing this striped white dress. I think some people say that, like, if you look up ticking fabric, you can find something very similar. There's really cool stuff going on with this. It is in full overlap. It closes almost to her full side, and you can see that little black button on her left side. That is closing that dress. And then from there down is where it closes on the waistline to the skirts. The back has really cool detailing. It's surface work. It is couched stitches. So it's like it's couching a darker thread of some kind in this pattern. I think this is done to distract the eye from the fact that the stripes don't pattern match. There's no way that you could pattern match stripes on the angles that those pattern pieces are on. And I think this is a really clever way to distract the eye and add a little bit of detail to that, personally. I don't know why they did it otherwise, but this is my fan theory. You can also see here, she is wearing her boots. They have a kind of little almost Hessian boot detail where they have a little tip at the front, center front. That's an easy DIY you could do with any boots that you have. Just as a heads up to folks who are wondering. And it looks like she's wearing socks under there. It's hard to tell if those are like meant to be seen or not. This is Pemberley part 2, where she's actually invited over versus just kind of being there. She's wearing her brown dress with a neck ruff again. You can see here, or I guess neck ruffle, and you can see here, this does look like a heavier fabric. I think this is either like a velveteen or a corduroy. I think they do use corduroy and then for one of the men's jackets. Or maybe it's like a brushed wool. Wools weren't as finished as smoothly as they are today. But I think this is a little bit of a heavier fabric, especially because of the ways that like the kind of pin tucking in the front look really heavy. You can see on the left image that the ruffle continues on to almost her left shoulder, almost like the left sleeve seam. A lot of Regency dresses have these like front folding closures and seams. I think hers closes there. I think that's where it closes. It buttons along her left side. Back to the Bennets. This is her back in her indigo dress as they're dealing with Lydia and the Perfidious Wickham. She is back in her indigo dress. This is what it looks like outside. Again, I think this is indigo. I'm just going to keep saying I think this is indigo. Dinner with the Wickhams. She's not happy, but she is back in her brown cotton dress. Then goodbye to the Wickhams. We see her in her indigo dress and jumps. This is the only time we get to see her in these jumps. It's a blink and you miss it moment. I love these jumps. I think they're so cool. Jumps are basically just like a little quilted vest sweater situation that women would wear, especially at home in their privacy of their house, to stay cozy and warm. Now, we have her walking through town with her sisters and her mom. This is when they find out that Bingley might return to town. She is back in her brown cotton dress with a brown shawl. As they are walking and talking. Mr. Bingley comes a-calling. He proposes to her sister after a couple of awkward interactions. She is back in her brown jumper and shirt. She's accessorizing it with melancholy and staring at a twig. It is bedtime at the Bennet household, so she is in her chemise and her depression banyan, and that's when Lady Catherine arrives. You can see this a lot better in the movie. But there is a kind of one little center button or closure on that banyan that kind of at her midsection closes, but I think that's all the closures that are on this. restless night's sleep, if they got any sleep at all, and they meet each other in the field and it's their proposal. She's once again in her chemise and brown coat. Then later, Mrs. Darcy, she's in a chemise and one of her coats, or maybe she's in her new robe, maybe she's in her entirely new Mrs. Darcy outfit. I doubt it. This movie is very considerate about the costumes. I think she's probably in the same coats we've seen her in. One extra thing I wanted to throw in here is the promo images. I think this is really fun. You can tell these are promotional images done after the movie was probably shot. The far right is her coming down the stairs, but she's in another field outfit. The middle image is this very romantic, moody image of him in his field walking proposal outfit, and her in another field dress, which brings us to the progression on the left. She's wearing his coat. She's wearing his field coat. She's not wearing that in the proposal scene, the last and final proposal scene. This is 100% a promo image because he has put that coat on her, and she's clearly not wearing a chemise. She's clearly wearing her nether-filled ball dress under that. I love these promo images because they give us better details of the costume. They give us the kind of other lighting of the costume. I think this is important to look at these because there's a ton of these floating around from this movie, and people post them all the time, and that's fine, but we can't use those when we talk about accuracy because they're not in the movie, everybody. Like, they're not in the movie at all. These are just fantasy promo images, and that's fine. I love them. But they're not actually in the movie. They're not color corrected for the movie. They're not put under the filters the movie was put under. So that is an important thing to think about as you move into maybe making your own clothes, which is you need to pick which you're going to do. Are you going to pick the movie version of the outfit, or are you going to pick the non-filtered version of the outfit that you're going to make? And that's up to you. So we have now gone over all of her outfits, and I wanted to just wrap with showing you Lizzie Bennet's capsule collection, as I call it. These are her dresses. She has 8 total dresses in this. They get a lot of use, except for the 2 kind of lighter colored ones that get only a particular one-time use. I think that's fine. It's intentional. You can see here that brown with neck ruffle. You can see a lot better that bodice detailing. I think that's a very heavy fabric in my opinion. The rest are very light, and I think that's really interesting. She skews toward more earthy tones. I personally think, my headcanon is that it skews toward clothes that can take mud or grass stains a lot better. That's my personal opinion. She has 2 coats. She has the one on the left that I consider her borrowed coat. I think she's borrowing it from her father. It looks like a men's coat to me of a little bit earlier time. And then the light brown coat that is lined. You can see the liner a little bit there on the right image. Accessories include books, her depression banyan, a shawl, jumps, she's an apron, a bonnet, and some boots. Costume resources. Now we've gone over all this, and I wanted to provide some places that if you are like me and you've wanted to make these costumes, these are the things that I would be directing you to. These are some things that I will also be considering when I'm making all of these. Here are some pattern recs. So first and foremost, never use Sense and Sensibility patterns. You can Google why they're problematic. I don't need to tell you that here. They are. Red Threaded has great short stays if you want to make stays. They also have a longer version. Both stays are amazing. I have made the short stays, and I have bought the pre-made long stays. They're beautiful. They're comfy. I love them. Black Snail patterns. I have not used this pattern. I've used other patterns of theirs. I think this is a good one to start off with. It's a very good base. I would say the Simplicity American Duchess pattern, S8941, is actually probably the best bang for your buck in terms of usability across a lot of things, because it has that long sleeve pattern in it. It has that kind of 3/4 sleeve if you want that. I think the sleeve variation will be most useful because she does have a lot of longer sleeves in this, or weird 3/4-ish sleeves. It is also a front closing dress. In terms of the bodice, you will just need to kind of alter the skirt to be a little off to the side if you want that. You could also just keep that and have the strap attached to the dress and then just kind of button to the side as a fake closure. Like, that totally works too. Other things to look for, Laughing Moon has a bunch that are also really great. And Black Snail Patterns has another one that I think could be really good in terms of center front closure and body in the back of the dress. Pattern alterations, again, she has these center front closing things, and that they have these offset to the side closures. I wanted to give you an idea too of the overlap. If you've never made the kind of overlapping bodice, a lot of the dresses that you're going to get, the patterns don't have that. So I wanted to give you an idea of how you would make that. So here's my rough drawings of that. You'd take that bodice pattern and you see that on the fold thing, get paper that's as big as the pattern and put that on the fold of a piece of paper, and then cut that out once or twice depending on like if you are worried about messing it up. And then you're going to cut out that new pattern piece. You're going to then make a line like kind of from the shoulder. Don't cut across the neck too high because that will not be comfy, but cut across to the waistband to make that overlap. Definitely add seam allowance back into that you cut out. And then you can do this once and just flip the pattern piece, but that's how you get a basic overlap. So yeah, you can do it one time so you have it good, but if you want to do it twice, you can. If you want to have an extra copy in case you mess it up, have that. Now, material recs for this. I would say have fun with this. Look for light linens, some fun cottons, get close to those research images because there are filters and monitors changing colors all the time for this movie. There are promo images everywhere that do not match at all what you see in the movie. Be open to interpreting how you want to interpret it. A reminder that even if you get like the images of like some photos of these dresses at auction, that dress is not going to look the same at auction as it is on screen. So do you want your outfit to match what's on screen or the actual at auction dress? Those are choices you should make, and it's fine for you to make them. I'm just letting you know that green dress never looks green to me on screen. It always looks a little bit blue gray. The indigo dress always has different coloring everywhere. It might be more green in person. I think it's indigo on screen though. We're getting into recreating my own. So this is a little section about me trying to make her brown jumper dress and the woes and wins that happened here. In terms of materials, I use a self-drafted pattern because I am trying to be better at patterning. I had a button-up shirt that I put on under it that I already just had. I also thrifted a scarf for this. I got free fabric at a fabric swap that I thought would be really good for this. It turned out not to be good for this, but that's okay. I did dye it a little bit darker. I put twill tape to reinforce a bunch of spaces in this since the fabric weighed a ton. I got button twist and buttons to put on buttons. I did a lot of research and I tried to make sure that like the seams and all that stuff kind of seemed similar. The center button fastenings on the bodice were hard for me. I did not put that in the correct place, but we'll get to that later. But it does have a center closure in the front bodice, and the skirt is off to the side. The waistline here is closer to a natural waist than an underbust waistline. The back is cut pretty low on this. You can see in some of the images the back shot. And I will say there's more body once again in the skirts in the back than in the front, which is common for all of her dresses. Some issues here, obviously, I was limited to the materials I got at a swap. So it was only like, I don't know, 2.5 yards. The materials needed to be dyed to actually look a little bit closer to brown. They frayed super easily. I should have made the buttons the center instead of kind of on the split. And then the skirt is really tricky to secure. I think it's the fabric I chose, if I'm being honest. TBD on the final piece. I actually think I'm going to redo this, and I just wanted to have this here as a placeholder, as a one day I'll finish this. Further reading, because again, I want to come back to we shouldn't romanticize this era. We shouldn't just leave it there. I have a bunch of things I want you to read if you want to. You can buy these books, you can check them out from the library, you can get audiobooks for them. Empire of Cotton, A Global History by Sven Beckert is really important because it understands the global harm that did happen when cotton became really popular in the 1700s and through, obviously, the Victorian era. There is a deep and direct connection to enslaved folks and harm done to humans through the slave trade. It's really important that we think about that. It's really important that we know when we pick the fabrics for certain things that there's also a history of why those were picked, why people were wearing those things, like where it came from. There's some reality checking that we have to do when we're in this space. It doesn't mean that like it absolves everyone of harm to just know it. Like, I think that like it's real that Austen's heroines wore these cotton dresses. It doesn't absolve her of anything for us to just be like, oh well, yeah, we know where it came from. It just means there's a lot of complicity in the harm that was done to other humans. The Black Count, Glory, Revolution, Betrayal, and the Real Count of Monte Cristo by Tom Rees. This is super good. It is one of my favorite books I've read recently. It is about Alexander Dumas' father, who was actually a high-ranking general during the Napoleonic Wars for France. Check it out. I think it tells you so much about history and about like how Black men did exist. I think so much of Austen adaptations really erase so much of what's happening, and they only focus on whiteness. And I want to tip the scales for some Austen readers and watchers by throwing you into the deep end of there's other things out there that show how many people of color were in these spaces. African Europeans is another one. This doesn't just focus on the Regency. This is obviously a much wider thing, but I do think it's a good jumping off point if you are unaware of this and you want to keep understanding how African folks existed. They were there. This is not something new. This is by Olivette Otel. Please check out all of her work. She does incredible research and is always speaking like the coolest things. The only fiction book I have on here is Longbourn by Joe Baker. I think this is really critical in terms of the conversation around the Bennets and their dirty hems and what trouble that would make for the help. I think it's super important to understand the servant's point of view in anything. I know some people really hate this book. I'll be honest, it's been so long since I read this. I don't know the content warnings that I would use for it anymore. So please do search for them because I think that there are a couple content warnings that are needed for that. A lot of people hate it because it shows the Bennets in not a great light. I think it's really good to adjust yourself and make yourself uncomfortable with what the Bennets' kind of quirkiness meant for their servants. And that's really critical in kind of unpacking our romanticization of Jane Austen. Finally, we are done. I hope you have at least had a fun time watching me talk too much in depth about every single costume Lizzie Bennet wears in Pride and Prejudice 2005. I had a great time. I can't wait to start tackling my little Lizzie Bennet capsule wardrobe. It's gonna be great. I want to accessorize a ton more with some of her other things, so we'll see how that turns out. Follow me on this journey by following me here. This is where I'll be posting the videos. I will have a longer video about the brown jumper dress and hopefully like fix some of the problems with it or just remake it completely, and you'll get to find out about that soon. Check out my Patreon. Patrons actually like always get to see my stuff as soon as I'm making it versus in the world where I don't always post immediately when I've made something. You can also leave me a tip on coffee. Links are in my description. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to check out the rest of the virtual JaneCon programming. There's other cool stuff. If you've missed anything, they should be on YouTube still. And with that, thank you so much for being here, and don't forget to make it so.